13 years ago, audiences across America were horrified by the savagery of a faceless killer. In the wake of this bizarre rampage, he vanished. Now, after more than a decade of silence, he has come out of hiding. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. The Buzz is back. Directed by Toby Hooper.
Well, all right, Oklahoma! Yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2! How's it going, everybody? I'm Zigzag. This is Red Crane. We are from Death Curse Society, and we're going to get to Bill in just a second. We just want to see how y'all are doing tonight. Yeah! Is anybody here for the Daniel Harris thing Friday? Yeah! All right. Who was at the OKC HorrorCon this weekend?
I'm sure you guys can make a little more noise than that. Who was at the OKC HorrorCon? You gotta work these people.
I'm gotta work. Hey. All right, I know what people like. Free shit, right?
Free shit!
That's right. Who wants to win a t-shirt, a prize pack, including 2 passes for this very theater, a Core 4 Brewery $10 gift card, and then a DCS gift pack to go with it, which has a t-shirt. We got your size. But I got a trivia question for you. So, I'm going to ask it. If you think you can answer it, put your hand up.
Yeah.
Frank will be around to get you.
I'll come and find you.
Listen carefully. Now, Otis B. Driftwood is wanted in connection to the following crimes: murder, rape, kidnapping, plus 7 other crimes. Who thinks they can give me 3 of those?
Oh, first one right here. Hold on. But I saw anyway. What are they?
Necrophilia, kidnapping, and murdering.
Well, that's, you named 2 of the ones I named. I need 3 of the other ones. Okay, there's another hand up right there.
One more real quick, hurry.
I think. Excuse me, pardon me.
And I step right on your feet. I miss everybody else. 3 murder.
We got murder, we got rape, we got kidnapping. I need 3 of the 7 more.
Necrophilia,
Yes.
arson,
Yes.
and robbery.
No.
Wah, wah, wah. This guy right here, I think, was next.
You got 2 of them, man. This should be very easy.
Do I have to name this thing too?
Yes.
Necrophilia,
Yes.
arson,
Yes.
abuse of a corpse.
What is that?
Abuse of a corpse.
Mass human experimentation. Yes!
Yeah!
Hey, what size shirt you got, buddy? XL? I'll see you after the show. I got your prize pack.
Give me that. Nice job, everybody. Thank you.
I'll get you the shirt right after we're done here. Because we got to get something a little bit special, I think. And is he ready? He's ready. Let's bring him in, folks. The Sawless family. Let's bring him down, Bill Moseley. He's enjoying this walk and the atmosphere and everything.
All right.
Yeah.
Step right. There's nothing. See, I don't think he'll feel it. Sit here. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Did you like the movie? Yeah! Okay.
Hey, dog will hunt. Take my plate, you dog dick.
Hey, see, you had that request already come in. Someone wanted to make sure you said that, right?
Said lefty request.
All right, let's get to this, man. Just a few days ago, the Devil's Rejects turned 16 years old.
Whoa.
Are you surprised the Firefly family has had that kind of, it's kind of stay for almost 20 years?
Yeah. Sam. it's so funny because when Sid, R.I.P. Sid Haig was still alive, we would go to a lot of conventions and we would sit next to each other. And inevitably, someone would come up to me and say, is there going to be a sequel to Devil's Rejects? And I'd say, hey, Sid! He'd go, what? And I'd say, is there going to be a sequel to Devil's Rejects? He'd say, nope. And I'd say, how come? And then we'd go, 1, 2, 3, because we're fucking dead! And I guess we weren't.
We'll lead into a good one there. Crank.
Well, you and Sid in those films played so well off each other. And like you said, rest in peace. But what was one of your favorite stories from the set with Sid Haig?
With Sid? There were so many of them, I gotta say. Maybe, I don't know if it was really like a hoot, but when we were just about to take on the Russellville Sheriff's Department at the very end of Devil's Rejects, there was a moment when we're in the car, we got Baby and we got, Captain Spaulding in the back seat. I'm in the front seat driving, got some holes in my hands from William Forsythe, and to my right in the passenger seat is a shotgun and 2 pistols. And we're about to do the big showdown, and so I turn and I hand Baby one of the pistols, and then it comes down to me and Captain Spaulding. We've always had a competition, and so the question is who gets the shotgun, which is a big gun, and who gets the pistol. And I remember, and it wasn't in the script or anything, but I remember looking back at Sid and getting, having an eye contact. It was a moment, and in that moment I just thought I'm going to gift him with the shotgun. So I lifted up the shotgun and handed it to him, and he looked back at me, and there was a moment there which, the cameras doesn't pick up everything. But in that moment, it was kind of like, okay man, I love you, and we're going to die, so you get the shotgun. Also, it's a little impractical when you got holes in your hands and you're trying to steer the fucking car, but that was a moment, and I really had cherished that.
I got a little bit more to go with on Devil's Rejects. We're going to get to Texas Chainsaw.
What did we just see anyway? No, we just saw Chainsaw. Oh my God.
All right, the top requested. You know what I'm saying? All right, you mentioned the Devil's Rejects ending. It's fucking perfection, man. Freebird playing, you guys are taking out in a riddle of bullets and not giving a fuck the whole time. It's fucking perfect. Now,
All right.
oh, she's sleeping.
She's good. She's riveted.
So this happens now. Some of the fans came out, some people saw the movie, thought this ending was so perfect and a great way to end the Firefly family. Then here comes 3 from Hell. Do you think that, like some of the fans said, this was carnage, the Devil's Rejects ending with a sequel like 3 from Hell, which is pretty good, by the way?
Well, it's amazing the resurrection power of money. It can bring anything back to life, especially in, it's, money's thicker than blood in the film world. But I was a little surprised because I had always imagined that, if we did come back, it would be kind of cool as if we actually went to hell. And the devil was like, we were too much for the devil to handle. So the devil then sends us back. We are rejected by the devil. But of course, then you run into the problem of having supernatural. If we're supernatural, then, anything that happens to us, any kind of human problems, really aren't that big a deal since we're immortal. So I think that was actually the greatest, the most practical way to do it. Yet we all got shot by rifles 100 times, and somehow we managed to live. My golly.
Hey, we were glad to see the Firefly family come back.
Oh, me too.
Everybody 3 from Hell, right? Yeah.
3 to 3.
And, okay, we'll get a little bit closer to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, too, with this one, all
I
right?
need to say about 3 from Hell is that originally it was written for, me, Sid, and Sherry. And then we found out right before we started shooting that Sid had some health problems. And so Rob, almost overnight, rewrote the script so that, Sid just, had what he had, and then we introduced a new character, Foxy, the great Richard Brake, who just happened to be available. It worked out so amazingly that, and it was great the day that Sid came and did his part. Really touching. For me, Sid, was a great traveling buddy. We've been to many conventions, both in the U.S. and abroad. So it was real devastating, but it was a bittersweet. There's a moment in Free From Hell where your baby and I are talking about, the dearly departed Captain Spaulding, and there was, so we get those moments, So you see it on the screen, but when we're sitting there doing it, it's you can get that moment, and it was really genuine and sweet.
I do remember getting the movie out too. And it was finished, and they were just the delay after delay to get it out. And man, it seemed like we were playing beat the clock while Sid was still here. And I am happy he did get to see it before you left us.
Well, I think part of that was about Rob's schedule too.
Right.
Because Rob, his day job, he's a rock star. Yeah. So I mean, he's got other pots on the stove, so to speak.
Getting closer, like I said, to Texas Chainsaw.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, we're pretty close. We're in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Every Texas OU weekend.
Oh Lord, don't bring that up here. Don't bring that up here. Wait.
I know. Go Pokes. All right. Yes. I sit corrected.
Every 5 to 10 years or so, the old news and the trailers somehow seems to resurface for All-American Massacre, the return of Chop Top. Some people know a little bit about it. All right. What is the main issue holding this up from seeing the light of day? And do you think fans will ever see this, or should it ever see the light of day?
I really don't know. How's that for an answer?
That's a terrible answer, but it's one we expected.
Like every 10 years this comes up, so I'm
Well, I was in it, and it started out as a Toby Hooper's son Tony, William, aka Tony, actually did he wanted to do like a 10-minute short called the All-American Massacre, really to show off his computer graphics skills. And so I remember he called me up and said, can you play Chop Top like 10 years later or whatever? And I said, yeah, okay, I'll give you a day. And so I showed up. There was a great makeup guy named Todd Bates, another RIP. And Todd was a big Chop Top fan, and so he made me up as Chop Top 10 years later, so I had a much bigger plate because I could scratch it and eat over those 10 years. And so I had this big plate. I was in like an orange jumpsuit, and I was in a mental penitentiary, that's what they call it. And anyway, so we started shooting that. It was like flashbacks and flash forwards, and there was a lot of cool stuff. It was only supposed to be 10 minutes. And what happened is the person who played Leatherface was the world's greatest guitar player named Buckethead. Horn bugs! Anyway, so Buckethead played Leatherface, but he had to he's a skinny guy, so he had to have a fat suit. So he's playing Leatherface, and it was a very wild little 10 minutes. But I think it started getting bigger and bigger, and more ideas and more footage, and I think it just got overwhelming, or something happened with the rights, and I don't even know. But so I don't know if you'll ever see it, but. Thanks to the All-American Massacre, I got the part of Otis, because of the All-American Massacre, I met my buddy Todd Bates, the makeup guy who loved Chop Top and could do the Chop Top makeup. And I got a call, months later. This is back in like '99. I got a call from a fellow who was putting on a horror award show at Universal Studios, called the Igor Awards, and it was a little outdoor, a little kind of rinky-dink, at least at the beginning. And he needed an MC. And he said to me, Bill, you're a horror guy, right? I went, yeah. And so he said, well, we want you to MC this horror award show. And I said, well, do you want me to come as Chop Top? And he said, yeah. So he gave me a little extra money to bring along Todd Bates and his friend, and they made me up as Chop Top, and I emceed the show. And one of the award recipients at that Igor Awards in October of '99 was this guy named Rob Zombie. And I had never met Rob before. My older daughter, who was like 12 or 13 at the time, was a big Hellbilly Deluxe fan, and so I brought her along, and that was good daddy points. And I was up on stage going, and here he is, Rob Zombie. And Rob comes out, and he kind of takes a look at me, and he goes, God, if you told me that was the real Chop Top was going to be here, I would have said you were crazy. And so he got his award and everything. And after the show, I still dressed as made up as Chop Top with my daughter and her friend. Had a little chat with Rob, his then girlfriend Sherry, now wife, and his mom and dad, because he had never won. He'd been up for Grammys and things, but he'd never won an award before. So getting the Igor Award, just a little demon statue with like a little metal tail, was very important for him. And we got to talking, and he said, I was in the green room and I was listening to you, and I was thinking, that guy's doing like a decent Chop Top. And then I get out and it's like, oh my God, it's Chop Top. So about a month later, I got a call from Rob's manager, Andy, asking if I wanted to play this character called Otis Driftwood in Rob's newly greenlit movie called House of a Thousand Corpses. And I said, yeah. And the rest is history.
Yes. Excellent.
Well, all right, I'm sure some of you guys have a few questions out there, is that right? Well, maybe two of you, I guess. All right. Well, if you'll go ahead and start forming a line over here. If you have a question, I'll come over there and talk to you guys. And you two have fun together.
And by the way, I've had a great time. I've only been here, and I haven't had a car, so I've had to kind of walk around Bricktown. But I have gone on the little boats. I took the boat ride and got a little history lesson. I went to the ball game last night. Sorry, Dodgers actually lost, but so I've been having a good time. Love being here. Really glad y'all came out tonight. So thank you. All right. Matt from Tulsa. All right.
Any Tulsans in here?
This is Matt from Tulsa.
All right. Couple of Tulsa.
Yeah, I'm just very curious, at what point did it set in that this was going to be a very different Texas Chainsaw movie? And, very big, huge tonal shift, I think, in some aspects from the first movie. At what point did that kind of sink in?
Well, I was so shocked that I was given the part of Chop Top that it never really sank in. I mean, I was writing for magazines in New York City back in '84, in the '80s, mid '80s, and I had done a short film, my own. I wrote it and produced it and everything, called the Texas Chainsaw Manicure, and it was set in a beauty parlor on Staten Island, New York, and I played this woman goes into a beauty parlor, she gets her hair done, and then she's sitting under the dryer, and the beautician says, do you want anything else? And the woman goes, yeah, I think I'll have a manicure. And the beautician goes, manicure, calls to the back of the shop, and all of a sudden you hear this chainsaw, and of course we had a sliding steel door in the back. Opens up, and here comes Leatherface with the saw, smoking saw, and he comes over to her, and this didn't answer your question, probably. And he comes over and starts sawing on her fingers, and she's screaming and passes out. Well, then she comes to. It's only a 5-minute one. And she comes to, and she's like, no. She's got a fabulous man. And she goes out to the truck where her husband is waiting for her, and that was played by me. I played the husband, dressed up like Ed Neal with a, like a hitchhiker from the original Chainsaw, with the wine mark and the whole deal. And she goes, look, honey, I got the best manicure ever. And Ed goes, and Ed didn't go anything. Bill goes, hey, that's great, honey. We should celebrate with some head cheese. And I had gone and bought a lump of head cheese, which doesn't look like much, but if you know what's in it, it's funky, man. And anyway, so I held up this head cheese, and in one take I even licked it. And anyway, a friend of mine showed that short to Toby Hooper back in '84. And I called up Toby on the phone. I got his phone number too. And Toby went down, hello. I said, yeah, Toby, it's me, Bill Moseley. Who? I said, well, yeah, I'm the guy that did the manicure. And he goes, oh, hell, I love the manicure, Bill. I said, oh, great. And he goes, yeah, now who played the hitchhiker? And I went, well, that was me. He said, well, if I ever do a sequel, I'll keep you in mind. 2 years later, one night in New York, phone rings, it's Kit Carson, who wrote the screenplay, asking where to send a copy of the script of Texas Chainsaw 2. So those were back in the days, pre-internet, so you actually had to put things in the mail. There was no computers, and so it came, and I read it. This is, again, I'm answering this question. And I read the script, and I thought, this is hilarious, and because he told me to look at the part of Chop Top, or maybe it was Chop Platehead, I think was the original character, but there was a conflict with Masters of the Universe. I think they already had a Platehead. So it's Chop Top, and I looked at it and I thought, God, it's a big part and it's funny as hell. And so I told Kit Carson that. I called him back and said, man, it's great. So they were so, and he said, well, you'll hear from us later. And the next call I got was from Canon Films, good old Canon Films, their legal department, asking if I had an agent. And I'm writing for magazines. I'm not, and I said, let me get back to you. So whenever you're in doubt, always say, let me get back to you. This was really helpful. And I had met an agent at a Christmas party a couple months earlier, and I called her up. She was at William Morris, and I told her what the story was, and she said, I said, would you negotiate my deal? And she said, well, I'll look into it. And so she called me back, and she said, well, they really want you to play this Chop Top character. And I went, oh, wow, that's crazy. And she said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is they want you to play Chop Top. I said, great, what's the bad news? She said, well, the bad news is they're only going to pay you scale, like SAG, Screen Actors Guild minimum. And as a freelance writer, I was making maybe $400 a week in New York, on a good week. And I said, well, how much is scale? It doesn't sound good, it sounds like a fish. And she said, I think it's $1,600 a week. I was like, that's bad news? And then she said, well, they also, because you have a plate in your head, they want you to shave your head. And I was like, okay. So she said, well, because I told them you couldn't act, and so couldn't act for like months while it grew back, so they've agreed to pay you $5,000 to shave your head. And I was like, God, is that the bad news? That's like great. So anyway, that's a long answer.
This is Bria from Choctaw.
All right, Bria.
Hello, hi. Matt from Tulsa's question was really good, and now I'm embarrassed to say mine. But I was going to ask, since music is Chop Top's life, what do you think some of his favorite musicians would be? And do you think he would have a favorite Spice Girl?
The Spice Girls came long after Chop Top fell down that hole. So, probably Pepper, Spice Girls. I actually did. I made myself a little cassette tape of music that I played when I was, off duty. Clearly Iron Butterfly and Humble Pie, it was back in the day. When Kit Carson came to me, he was, the co-producer, whatever it was, assistant, whatever they were called. And anyway, he came to me and he said, we've got a deal for the soundtrack with this company called IRS Records. And he said, and they let us, they said you can have any of our artists. And so, of course, there is, Tip Up 3, and there's some really cool old musicians, and one of them was the Cramps, and he said, okay, one of the Cramp songs that we want is, I was thinking about Green Door, and I said, oh no man, Goo Goo Muck, and so so they put Goo Goo Muck in. That was my contribution to the soundtrack.
Alrighty, gang. This is Jesse from Oklahoma City.
All right.
Hi, so my question is, can you tell us what it was like working with Tom Savini and kind of the process to get made up as Chop Top?
That's a tough memory. When I got to Texas, one of the first things they did was shave my head. And my family, the men in my family are very, hair sensitive. And so for some reason, I'd always thought like losing your hair or shaving your head would be like traumatic. And it was. The first time they got me, they wrestled me down, they shaved my head. And And, actually it was okay, because then what they did right after that was they plastered my head, they covered my head with plaster to make a head mold so they could do like the chop top appliances and the plate and all this other stuff. So that was my first taste of the, what I call the House of Pain, Savini and his gang. And a lot of the guys that were on that were part of that crew, have gone on to do great stuff in movies and TV. But when they said, look, we're going to use your body mold to make nubbins. Sorry, buddy. And so they put me in this body mold, and actually I think I was on my belly, and they had to keep pouring cold water in this hole in my back because as the alginate hardened, it got hot. So I'm like, in this body cast, I can't move, it's getting hot, they're pouring water. And they, on the floor, I'm looking down on the floor of the House of Pain, the makeup shop, and they had this big old forensic book that had pictures of like really horrible murders. And they just kind of, I'm just looking down, and every once in a while they change the page, and they tortured me. The chop top makeup was about 2.5 hours on and 1.5 hours off every day. So, because they had to preserve the little hair strips, and it was a makeup called Pax, P-A-X, which really needed, you couldn't just wash it off, it wasn't water soluble. So you needed I think they used acetone. If you know that. I think that's what you used, you stick your paintbrushes in there to get the paint off. So they would, rub me down with acetone after saving the little hair pieces. And it was a nightmare. Shoot was about 8 weeks.
8 weeks,
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah, just about. Plus, because I was cheap, quote unquote, like minimum wage, what they could do is they could do something called forced call. Most of the time, Screen Actors Guild makes you gives the actor at least a 12-hour turnaround. And if you do anything less than that, you have to pay the actor like a full day's wage or something. And so Canton Films, they had some dough. So they were pressing me into service every day. I think I had my average sleeping time, I think I had about 6 hours to myself, at the end of every day. And then back up and doing it again. And the good news is I just loved the fucking job. So I was okay with it.
Alrighty, this is Ben from Oklahoma City.
All right.
All right, how's it going? I'm actually from South Texas, but these movies scared the shit out of me, so I moved up here.
All right, yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever told you, but if I was going to be murdered, it would probably be by you or King Otter.
We can arrange that later.
Yeah,
you first.
Have you seen me driving?
Speaking of that, I have 2 questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First one's kind of a 2022, I guess. Are you able to talk about the movie Jasper with King Otter?
Movie what?
Jasper?
Oh, not yet. Not yet, but yes.
Okay.
It was fun. And it's coming.
I
That's
didn't know if you
good.
could give maybe a little hint of it without giving anything away, or?
Well, it's, you can't really, but it is,
Okay,
there's some animation in it. And some, it's kind of mixed animation. Not quite Roger Rabbit, but yeah, Jasper is, yeah.
Second question, working with Bill and Selmo, Bill and Phil.
Yeah.
You wrote the lyrics, you had them ready to go. It was a 3-4 day project, correct?
Yeah, about 4 days, yes. I kept bugging Phil because, a long time ago, I got a call from somebody saying, do you want to, there's something called, I forgot the name of it's like a website, and artistsdirect.com. And they were doing a series where actors and musicians were kind of interviewing each other. And I think Jason Mewes was supposed to interview Phil, and something happened, so they asked me to do it. And I got to the stage, and I met Phil for the first time. And Phil knew a lot more about horror movies than I knew about his music, and so I kind of just listened to him talk about all the movies. I know a little bit about it, but he was awesome. But we became pals, And every once in a while, I would bug him. We were kind of pen pals on the email, and I would bug him about maybe getting together and doing a project together. And it's kind of like asking Paul McCartney to play bass in your garage band. I think it's like,
Did you have the music, like whenever it came out and you heard it, was it like, yes, that's what I was thinking, or was it?
Not really. I mean, what I did was I came down. I mean, he said, "Look, I got 4 days. Get down here." And so I, cashed in some air miles. I flew from LA to New Orleans, rented a car, drove over Lake Pontchartrain, found his place in the woods, and I brought some lyrics and some poems and different things I'd written, and we kind of went through that, and we picked 5 or 6 songs, 5 maybe, and then Bill kind of figured out the music to them. And I remember the day that I was supposed to do the vocals for it, I had some bad gumbo the night before, so I was like, puking, and so I remember getting up early, and I went to Piggly Wiggly, and I got myself some apple juice and some yogurt. Real rock star. And so I come into the studio, and Phil likes to double everything. So you sing something, and he says, "Okay, do it again." So sing it again, I guess at that time. But anyway, at one point, the engineer fired up a bowl, and I'm not really a bowl guy at this point. So it was a very close, small studio, and so I'm trying to sing this thing, and then I don't know, for some reason I got nauseous, and I remember running out the studio into the back, and I puked into a bush, and kind of rubbed my mouth, and went back in, and thought, now I'm a fucking rock star. But it was good. It worked out, and Phil, of course, has housecore records, so a lot of Child Bite and a bunch of different bands, kind of guested on Bill and Phil. And I just saw Phil actually last weekend in Indianapolis, and he said he's up for Bill and Phil Part 2, so.
All right, this is James from Norman.
All right.
Hey, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. So you have harmed or murdered a lot of people throughout your career. Is there anyone that maybe either while doing it or in retrospect while watching it you kind of feel sorry for? You're like, oh man, that kind of sucks.
No, I don't feel sorry for you. It's a fucking job, man. They're getting paid. I will say that when we were in the radio station doing the scene with LG's lying there, and I have my claw hammer and I'm banging him on the head, hey, incoming nail, and all that stuff. And poor LG, Lou Perryman, R.I.P., is lying there, and Tom Savini's right off the camera frame. He's got a blood pump. He's got a bunch of blood in a little tank, and he's got this, this tube that goes up LG's back and goes through his hair and kind of ends at the top of his hairline here. And so, I'm banging on poor LG, and Tom's pumping the blood, spurting, and so, it was very hot and close, and these were, again, the days where you actually had to have lights and, film, and, everything was fucking hot. And so I'm banging on LG, and a couple of times what happened is the hammer I was using was actually foam rubber with a coat hanger, core, so that it would kind of hold together. But it was very soft, and a couple of times Toby would yell, "Cut," and I go, and I look down, and the hammer would be like bowed over, like a little bow. And finally, we've done about, maybe 11 or 12 takes, and poor LG, and each time we have to wipe off the blood, and Tom has to preload the blood machine. It wasn't just a pump. And so finally, I do one more. Incoming mail. Banging on poor LG. And Toad goes, that was great. That was great. Let's just try one more. And I looked, and the hammer was straight up and down. And I looked, and I said, Toad, am I doing something wrong? And he goes, oh, hell no, No, Bill, I'm just having fun watching you. When your director tells you that, fucking cool, man. I was very excited about it.
This is Zach from Spencer.
All right.
Hey Bill, my question was, there's rumors for a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie coming out sometime, I don't know when, but I was wondering if you've got like the call or something to come in and do like a little cameo or hopefully play Chop Top again.
I haven't. No, I haven't. I did. I don't know if some of you remember Texas Chainsaw 3D or Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, which then became Texas Chainsaw Massacre because they got rid of the 3D, and then it became just Texas Chainsaw because Massacre didn't like. It didn't. They actually put it out to the public, and Massacre wasn't really a happy word or something, so they just called it Texas Chainsaw. And I actually ended up playing the cook in that. And I said, I said to the producer, I worked with the producer on Repo, and I said to the producer, like, why am I playing the cook? I mean, what's Chop Top? And he explained that Chop Top was owned by Canon, but the original Texas Chainsaw was owned by someone else, and they had the rights to the original, but not to the sequel, so they didn't have the rights to Chop Top. So they asked me to play the cook, and so I did that, and it was kind of weird because it's weird playing Jim Seedow. He was a great friend of mine, him and his wife Ruth, and we had Christmas cards and all that stuff, and so it was kind of weird playing him. And I had to. There was actually some scenes where I actually had to imitate his body moves because they were going to drop me in scenes that he was in. I don't know, it's all weird. And but anyway, so I had to try to figure out how to mimic his body movements, and he was really kind of spastic, as you can see. I mean, amazing. And he's so weird, and that's why I like him. But anyway, what I figured out was that it was all in his pelvis. That he kind of leads with his pelvis, so he's like this. And once I got that, like walking around with my pelvis, sorry, and then it became easy to say, "Look what your brother did to the door." And so that was the last time the phone rang. It was funny because the director said to welcome me onto the crew. He called me up before we started shooting. He said, "Welcome to the cast." I said, "Thank you very much." And he said, "Well, how does it feel to be playing the father?" And I said, "Oh, what do you mean, the cook? I mean, he's the brother." And the director went, No, he's the father." And I was about to argue, and this little voice said, "Shut up, Bill." And I went, "Feels good, feels good." But you can see at the very end of the movie, when we're all in the dining room scene, he goes, Jim is obviously the older brother. There are no mom and dad. There's grandpa, grandma. There's, the three boys, actually the four, because there's me. There's Jim, the cook is the oldest, and then Chop Top and the Hitchhiker are twin brothers, and Bubba is the baby. So Leatherface is the junior member of the Sawyers.
Alrighty, this is Rue from Oklahoma City.
All right, yes, we met earlier today. I overcharged him, yes.
Yeah, you already covered it.
All right, I covered it.
It was easily resolved.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Layla squared.
So thanks for coming out, man. It's really cool to have you here.
Cool.
I've never seen this movie on the big screen. It's nice. So I have a two-part question. What would you say has been your biggest accomplishment as an actor, and which film are you most proud to be a part of?
I'd say, my biggest accomplishment was probably, the thing I think I'm most proud of, at least that's out in the public, would be Devil's Rejects. That seemed to be good, and I didn't know it at the time. I always thought Rob was going to fire me, so I was very happy the way it turned out, and I stayed on the whole movie. But I would say the biggest thrill for me was always and will always be Chop Top. Because thanks to Chop Top, I met Tom Savini, who then directed Night of the Living Dead, the remake, and hired me as Johnny. And then thanks to Chop Top, doing that MC gig at Universal Studios, I got the job as Otis Driftwood. And so that, yeah, exactly. So that, I would have to say, thank you, Chop Top. I'm always grateful. But you know what I was really impressed with again tonight? I've seen this movie 472 times, 473 now. But I'm so impressed with Caroline Williams. I mean, she is, I really think she carries the movie. I mean, she does a lot of heavy lifting, and really is a true scream queen. I've never seen anybody scream that much. And, she is awesome. Well, except, the future scream queen. All right.
I think the thing that Rue and Bill learned today at the con was to always double check the number of zeros at the end of the credit card deal when you sign it.
Yes, on a square. Yeah.
All right, this is Tim. This is Tim from Bethany.
Right.
Hey Bill, it was awesome meeting you yesterday. Really cool. You gave me an awesome story about Boris Karloff and how you prepared for my favorite role of yours, Johnny. My earliest memory from seeing horror movies was your character Chop Top, so it was really awesome to be able to see this on the big screen and meet you yesterday. My question is a two-parter. Number one, do you have any cool memories about Dennis Hopper, aka Frankie the Fly, and also was that you that fell down actually into the hole at the end of the movie down the tunnel, or was that like a stunt?
Oh, that was a stunt, man. I wouldn't be walking, I think I'd be, hey, here he is. Maybe in Nubbin's wheelchair. That was a stunt, man. Thank God. The only, I didn't really work with Dennis that much. The only thing I remember is we would come in to breakfast at the Brook Hollow Motor Inn outside of Austin where we were billeted. We would be coming in, we'd be like having worked 20 hours and slept 3 or 4, and now we're ready to go back again. And Dennis would be in his, not his pajamas, but his bathrobe. And he'd be having breakfast at the Brook Hollow Motor Inn. And then I remember one day he was dressed and he took his golf clubs. He had a bag that was like hand-tooled leather, and he put his golf clubs in the trunk of his rented Lincoln Continental. And while we were going back to another day of torture, he was going off to Willie Nelson's country club to play golf. So he had a pretty good deal going on. So that was basically my Dennis Hopper story. Thank you. Okay.
All right, this is Gina from Lawton.
All right, G-E-N-A.
Yeah, good to see you again. I'm not weirdo, I swear. But I promised a friend that I'd say hi to you, and my question is also kind of like a really funny thing me and my friends say all the time, is they don't know who you are, so I introduce them to like horror movies. And we like to make a joke saying like, oh, when he's angry like that on the films like as Otis and Luigi Largo, that's not acting. And I'm like, well, I met him, he's a pretty chill guy, but I think about it, I'm like, you know what? Maybe something sets him off as soon as he gets on screen, or maybe he's hiding it. So it's like, what really sets you off or like gets you ready to be like in those crazy roles like that when you're psycho and you're all angry?
Well, I've kind of worked it all out. What I do is, just as a kind of an acting tip, you mean, like how do I get to those, horrible places? What I do is usually I just read the script 4 or 5 times, and I kind of get the general idea of who I am, what the story is, who the families are, what the connections are, and I really just kind of take it from there. When I play a psycho, I always, the one thing that you have to know to play a good psycho, and that is that you're the only sane one in the room. And if it comes down to that. I mean, most of the time, as you can see on the screen, I'm pretty much happy in my work, which is not a good thing for you, but good for me. But that's what I do. I just, if the script calls for it, there's in those moments, I can do that. I remember Rob was giving me a lot of shit during making Devil's Rejects, because when I was in those places, I was there, and then when he would say cut, I would pop out like a piece of toast and tell a joke or whatever else. And he kind of scolded me for that because there were some other actors, everybody's got their own method, I guess. And there were other actors who were like, they wanted to stay in character for like, a year or what they were doing. But I'm like, hey, and telling a joke, and they're like, trying to stay in character. So that's what I do. I'm there, but when I'm in those places, they're real, but it's also kind of like underwater, and you're waiting to, hear cut so you can come up and take a breath. But I don't know. I mean, I kind of look over my childhood. I guess I was, as angry as any kid. I wasn't like, horrible kid or have necessarily a horrible childhood. So I don't really know. I think it's just, I don't know, it's fun for me, I guess. Yeah. Scary.
This is Dylan from Oklahoma City.
All right.
Hi, I had two questions too, sorry. But, so I heard that, I've seen in documentaries about the film that right before shooting, the budget was cut back a little bit. And so Kit Carson was constantly rewriting like scenes the entire time that you guys were shooting. What was that like? Was it one of those like, oh God, we're like so pressed, or was it like, we can do it?
It's funny because my script, I have my original script, and there are so many different colors of the pages. First, Kit would give us the cranberry pages, the blue pages. Then it became the goldenrod pages. Then it became the cyan pages. It was like, and we kind of every day we would get a new set of, a new couple of pages for whatever scene we were shooting. But by then I was in a groove, man. You could have handed me a phone book and I would have known it by the time we were shooting. So I didn't really know so much about the budget. I did know that at the very end they talked about the supervising producer Ronnie Yakov, who was, Golden Globus or Israeli guys, and they, there was certain kind of a military attitude. And here's, Kid and Toby, and things that are kind of more Hollywood, and so I guess I don't know if we were going over budget or whatever was going on, but I remember the last couple of weeks we were, under a tighter rein, and. That we had to, that they were going to pull the plug, no matter what, at noon on July 4th of 1986, because there was a schedule, because we'd run out of money, whatever was going on. So we shot the scenes. We started July 3rd at noon, and we shot for 24 hours. And so, finally, I think we did the last scene. I can't even remember what it was. Oh my God, I do remember now. It was when I'm running up, chasing Stretch up the tunnel, and the explosion happens behind us, which is, the cook's grenade.
Right.
And there were a couple of, former military pyrotechnics guys, and they were doing the explosion. And, they weren't kidding. And so, at one point I hear action, so Caroline goes up the stairs, I'm chasing her, and then this explosion happens. And I'm supposed to kind of stay to the right of the tunnel so that the camera can see the explosion behind me. And, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the last day, now they're going to kill us. This is going to be a snuff film. They got everything they want out of us, and now they're going to fucking blow us up. And so I was exhausted, but not that exhausted. And so they said action. So Caroline runs up. I fucking scampered up, and they had the explosion. Well, guess what? It wasn't big enough for camera. And I thought, oh, okay, now they're going to kill me. And so the last, I think we did. That was only the second take, but the Israeli pyrotechnic guys had kind of a macho thing, so they thought, oh, you didn't see the explosion, motherfucker? We'll show you an explosion. And so that really got me nervous. So, it was action, and, I was like running up those stairs, man, and obviously survived. So.
Right. Second part, instead of non-flashbacks? Did you have Texas Chainsaw 2 flashbacks when you placed the boyfriend's face on the girlfriend in the hotel in Devil's Rejects?
That might have been a Rob Z flashback. For me, it's kind of old hat. Say, oh yeah, okay. Putting the car face on. Well then, flash forward to 3 from Hell. And Rob calls me up and says, you know, I just finished the script, or I'm writing the script for 3 from Hell. So I said, well, you know, it would be really cool if you know, my wife is an actress who's into Jenny, she's been in Thinner, and Rain Man, and Thelma and Louise, I mean, she's a real actor. And I said, is there a way to maybe give her a part? And Rob said, well, I'll see what I can do. I said it kind of gently so that, you know, if he said no, I wouldn't have to take it personally. But I just kind of put it out. And anyway, a month goes by, 2 months, finished the script, he calls me up and says, I'm sending you the script, and by the way, there is a part for Lucinda. And I went, oh, right, well, that's awesome, man. He goes, well, here's the good news. I said, yeah, and he goes, you get to kill her. And I said, oh, right, that's fantastic. And I cut her, well, I don't want to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen the movie, but let's just say the removing of the face is kind of a recurring theme in my cinematic career.
This is Andrew from Norman.
Yo. Thanks for coming. I have a bit of a two-part one, actually a question for Christoph. And now that we're mentioning that we're going down memory lane and all that, so the thing is, I think the first movie that I actually saw you act in was this movie from '09 called Dead Air.
All right.
Yeah, and I remember watching that and going like, intriguing, you know. And it was also a while back. I just don't, you know, I don't remember what it was all about. But then it was, you know, you play radio, DJ and stuff. Like, at any point when you were making that movie or something, was there like, this is kind of familiar because, you know, in this movie there's radio station that's prevalent and stuff, and do you like have, I guess,
radio flashbacks? Radio flashbacks. Not really, because I was, you know, I mean, I admired the radio station, but I wasn't, you know, a radio guy. Actually, when we shot Dead Air, it didn't really have radio flashbacks. But I certainly enjoyed doing it. What was tough about Dead Air was it was directed by Corbin Burnson, who's in LA Law, a bunch of different, you know, cool movies and TV shows, and so Corbin, we shot about the first 60 of, let's say, a 95-page script. We shot about the first 60 pages, and then Corbin had an acting gig, so we stopped shooting for about I think it was about 4 months. And so that was kind of weird because I had some facial hair and I had to kind of keep it trimmed and kind of keep my eye on the ball. And then we finally got back to shooting it. It really, you know, what a lot of people thought it was like, speaking of radio stations, a movie called Pontypool. But it wasn't, even though they're both set in radio stations.
Right. Yeah, I've seen both. So
yeah.
The second part of the question was for Christoph, and he was wondering if you had like a favorite memory from the Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. Is that
yeah, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. I just loved all those old Christmas horror films. The Silent Night, Deadly Night series is one of my favorites.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the memories would be fun.
I especially like how weird Part 3 got. Like, it just was so different than the first two. It got really weird, and so it always stuck with me, you know.
Well, it was Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 was actually the first time I cried on screen.
Yeah.
And that was the one fear I had as an actor going in. You know, I thought, boy, they can ask me to do just about anything, but if I have to cry in a scene, I'm screwed because, you know, I'm tough. I don't cry. And so I was worried about that. And so that kind of keeping that in mind, there was a scene where I'm Ricky, the Santa Claus killer. I've got a blinking brain cap. It's like looks like a half a fishbowl with a rubber brain and some orange juice and some little lights blinking on it. And I had in my trailer, I had like a little, I taped to the mirror, outshine the brain cap, because it's kind of hard to act when you're, hey, I'm down here, you know, with this blinking brain cap. But anyway, so there's a scene where I have somehow managed to get to an old lady's house in the woods, and And she takes me, and I have like some kind of a little, stocking cap on. I've got the windbreaker, the blinking brain cap, and she takes me in. She thinks I'm like a homeless guy. And if you see a homeless guy that's got a blinking brain cap, don't take him in. But anyway, so there's the blinking cap, and she brings me, and she sits me down. I'm all ruined and messed up and silent, and she sits me down. And because she's going to, she's befriended me and going to take care of me. And so she goes into the kitchen. I'm sitting down at the dining room table. She goes into the kitchen and fetches me a bowl of hot turkey soup. And so she puts it in front of me, and I make an actor's choice. I'm left-handed, so my actor's choice was to eat the soup right-handed, kind of make it look like I'm awkward and brain dead or whatever I was. So I'm eating the soup with my right hand. The brain is blinking, the camera's here, Monty Hallman, the director, is on action. And the woman comes over, she puts down the soup, and I pick it up, and I take a bite of the turkey soup. And I remember looking up at her face, and she was perfectly cast. She was such a beautiful old lady, like a grandmother, just so perfect. And I looked up, and the soup and everything, and the tears started to roll down my cheeks. And I'm like, these tears are coming down, smiling old lady. And then all of a sudden I hear Monty go, and cut. And stopped up watching. And so we cut, and I'm like, just there with these tears coming down my face, and the crew starts to applaud. Like, just spontaneously starts to applaud. And I just remember thinking to myself, this is fucking weird. But down came those tears, so I've never had a problem since.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is Sean from Oklahoma City.
All right.
So this is actually the second time I've seen Chainsaw 2 in the theater. The first time, my family was actually living in Burkburnett, Texas when it came out. And my father, in his infinite wisdom, convinced us that was a 100% true crime story. And he would use the thread of the Sawyer family anytime my sister and I were misbehaving in any situation whatsoever. So congratulations on shaping young hearts and minds.
All right. Here to help.
My question is, House of Thousand Corpses sat in the camp for quite some time before a distribution and release deal was reached. At any point, did you and the rest of the crew lose faith and it seeing the light of day? And when it did come out and became a big hit, how did that change things for you as far as your career, catching roles and such?
It changed it in a big way. We shot it in, I guess in 2000. And the problem was, we shot it on the back lot of Universal Studios in Burbank, which is, like a part of LA. And it was so funny because when we were shooting it, we were actually, the House of a Thousand Corpses was the chicken ranch from the best little whorehouse in Texas. So you have Dolly Parton and Sly Stallone singing songs, and now it's turned into the House of a Thousand Corpses. And there was actually a tram path right next to the house. So I remember one point I came out, I had Mr. Willis's skin, I'm covered with blood and the mask, and I'm all scary, and I just kind of come out into the light just to get some air. Here comes a tram with a bunch of people and tourists with cameras, and the guy, the tram guy is going, on the right, the House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie, and I come out and I'm kind of waving at them. Anyway, so what was the question again? Oh yes. So we wandered in the wilderness. So because we were on the back lot, we had executives from Universal Studios, which was who was producing the movie, on the set every day. But when they saw the finished product, they had second thoughts. And I think right around that time, there was a lot of things had gone down. There was Columbine, there was 9/11. There was a big hearing in the Senate about, trying to sell R-rated movies to kids under 17 or something. So there was a lot of political headwind. And Universal, did not, want to release the movie. And so we got picked up, I think, temporarily by MGM, and then that didn't work out. And then finally, a woman from Lionsgate Pictures saw a screening of House of a Thousand Corpses, told her boss, who was the head of movie acquisitions and production at Lionsgate, and he took a look at it, loved it, and kind of bought it, I guess, from Universal, and Lionsgate put it out. And that took, I think, about 3 years. During that time, I remember it really kind of was actually good for us, and certainly, worked for Devil's Rejects, because we kind of became a tight-knit family, where, we kind of bonded because, we were in the wilderness together. And then when the movie finally came out, it was like, it was like overnight. Actually, it wasn't so much a success. I mean, what happened for me was that because it was such a successful movie in the box office, Lionsgate ponied up some money and encouraged Rob to do The Devil's Rejects. So that probably was the biggest result of the release. And once The Devil's Rejects came out, then then I got a lot of work after that, including Repo.
Before we go on, Sean, I just had a question for you. Are you going to use that same parenting technique with your kids when they, Okay, there we go. All right.
You.
All right, this is Claire from Bethany.
Yep.
The first part is sort of a choose your own. Either pick which one you think you would have the best answer to. Which actor or actress you had the most difficult time working with, and besides your Devil's Rejects crew, what's the best offset story you have working on a movie?
Just offset?
I mean, like off.
I mean, on the set, but off the camera. Oh, okay, yeah, because I was going to say
off camera.
Come here. I don't really have anyone. I don't think of anyone in particular. But sometimes there are, different actors have different styles, and I just try to. I try to play the reality of the scene, and sometimes if an actor is doing some weird shit, I just try to make that part of the reality instead of because I've heard I've had a couple of friends who have worked with bigger stars, who then do a scene and then the star says, "Is that the way you're going to do it?" And it's just like when I hear that stuff, I cringe. But I just try to make it work. Sometimes if it's really a distraction, I'll just quietly take the director aside and have a little chat. But for the most part, we're all out there. The way I look at it is I serve the production. Just like the catering person, the teamsters, everybody, we're all serving the production. And that's what I try to do. I just try to, show up, on time or a little early if I can, try to hit my marks. I try to be, pretty decent in the chow line. And I flush the toilet in my trailer. So, I mean, what more can you ask for, right?
And the second question is from my best friend in E5. Besides any movie that you personally worked in, what's your favorite horror movie?
Well, that changes a lot because I have about a top 20 list. I loved, recently I loved Get Out and Midsummer. I thought those were awesome. And I loved Mandy. Mandy was and the reason I mention that is because in the November, December of 2019, I went over to Japan and worked on a movie called Prisoners of the Ghostland with Nicolas Cage. And the pig looks great, by the way. I can't wait to see it. So that's probably the latest thing that's coming out. It should be coming out in September. It's directed by a fantastic Japanese director named Sion Sono, S-O-N-O. And he's done things like Suicide Club, Cold Fish, I don't know if you guys have seen it, Hair Extensions, Anti-Porno. boy, you just go down his filmography, it's amazing. And this is his first English language movie. It's kind of a mashup between ninjas and cowboys. It's a crazy movie. And I don't know if that answers your question, but it at least gives me a chance to plug that movie. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. This is Keith from Tulsa, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get all your hair in the shot, but we'll try.
What happened to Dr. Satan? Did the cops find Dr. Satan and the 1,000 corpses and the insane people?
Whoa, that's a good question. When we shot Devil's Rejects, there was a scene with Dr. Satan that he had been taken, and he was, I think he was pronounced dead. He was on some kind of a hospital bed, and a nurse comes in, played by the beautiful Rosario Dawson, who is a big horror fan and wanted to, get in on Devil's Rejects. So she comes in and she's nursing, Dr. Satan, and Dr. Satan looks pretty dead, and maybe he doesn't even have a heartbeat. And she's kind of, looking over him, his body, and his ugly, long fingernails, like, grab her in the throat, and just start, and she, sounds the alarm, and some people come in and try to get his claw off her throat, but it doesn't work, and, her throat gets torn out. And so that's the last I saw of Dr. Satan. And they cut that out of the movie, by the way.
Is Captain Spaulding Otis's dad?
No, not even close.
Was Mom Firefly and Captain Spaulding ever together, and did they meet at the whorehouse in the second movie?
Well, you have to ask both of them. It was interesting. Rob, I think I don't know if it was Devil's Rejects, maybe, but he had some kind of a website, he had an online kind of bio of the different characters from Devil's Rejects, I guess it was. And in that, he said that Cutter, i.e. Captain Spaulding and Otis, met in prison. So I guess that's as close as it gets. So we're buddies. But then I think somehow, at least Sid played it as if he and Mother Firefly begat Baby. So Sid played his relationship with Baby was kind of like the father.
Why did Otis change from being a Bino evil genius to being a grumpy bad guy outlaw?
That's when I really thought that Rob was a genius. I thought, House of a Thousand Corpses, great movie, really did a good job, really cool. And then when we show up for the Devil's Rejects, I remember I was over at Rob's probably in January of 2005. I think that's when we shot it. And Rob said we're going to, I was over for the Super Bowl, and I was over at his house in LA. And Rob said we're going to do another one. And I said, well, that's great. And he goes, yes, and this is what you're going to look like. And he took a paper plate and he drew this sketch of, what looked like, Dwayne Allman. And and I was thinking, what the heck? And the first thing I did was ask him to sign it, so I got that still somewhere in my garage. But that was his idea. He said, and he drew this beard in. And I had never grown a beard in my entire life. And I said, well, this guy has a beard. And Rob went, yeah. And I said, well, I've never grown a beard. How do you grow a beard? And Rob looked at me and said, stop shaving. I was like, ooh. And so I stopped shaving, and I didn't know that this beard was in my chin. I was shocked. I was like, man, this fucking beard, this hair coming out of my face. It was funny because now I have blue eyes instead of, in House of a Thousand Corpses, I had lenses. They were kind of albino, they were kind of red and brown spots. And I think that there was a bad experience with a lens person who was very protective of my eyes. And as soon as 45 minutes was up, she'd yank me off camera, and I'd have to take some eye drops or something. I think Rob just thought, okay, no more lenses, let's just stick with the blue-eyed guy. And no longer an albino, you know, and now I look like an Allman Brother. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought it was also interesting in Devil's Rejects that Baby only does her laugh maybe one time, or that laugh that's very prevalent in House of a Thousand Corpses. And Captain Spaulding is pretty much out of grease paint the whole time. So that was pretty cool. And you know, what Rob did was also not only change the look of the characters, but almost changed genres. I mean, House of a Thousand Corpses is really an old dark house, classic horror movie. And Devil's Rejects is really kind of a violent crime road picture. So it was kind of cool that, you know, because most of the time, and certainly in the horror genre, I'm sure in others as well, what will happen is if you have a successful movie, usually your sequel is kind of like a remake of the first one. You're just hoping to get at least half as much box office. So, you know, there can be some cynicism that plays its way in there. But with Devil's Rejects, it was like Rob took that opportunity and just made this whole other, you know, went into this whole other genre and changed our looks, and really pretty amazing stuff. He also had a different, he did the music for House of a Thousand Corpses. He didn't do it, I think it was Tyler Bates, I think, did the music for Devil's Rejects, Awesome Tyler. And of course the soundtrack, because Rob is a rock guy, you know, and a music guy, a big music guy, he had access to all these amazing songs. I mean, you know, let's give a hand to for Terry Reid. You know? So anyway, so I don't know if that answers the question, but.
This is Miller from Sasakwa, and she's promised me she will behave this time.
Wow, what happened last time?
Oh.
Oh, all right.
Don't ask questions.
All right.
Totally misbehaved. But, no, House of a Thousand Corpses came out, and like, for here, it only showed in 2 cinemas. It was at Quill Springs Mall in April 2003. I was a senior that year, and we had to travel. I had to print out, I had to use one of my classes to get on MapQuest to print out directions because we didn't have smartphones. How to get all the way to Quill Springs Mall from Sasakwa, Oklahoma, 108 miles. And we went a triple date. And then some of us were under 18, some of us were like 17 and 16, and they wouldn't let us buy a ticket for more than one person if you were 18 and under. So we had to take off our jackets, give it to another person, go to a different teller to buy these tickets. But we were so aimed to watch the House of a Thousand Corpses. And that's a very happy memory for me. I recall that every time I need to feel good. And that also just, opened up so much more. Like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is, I think I love it a little bit more than the first one. I do like the first one, but I do like the second one a little bit more.
Are you applying for the podcast? What's going on here?
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's my fondest memory, and I told Rufus, that played Rufus Jr., or at the
Robert Hughes.
At the horror con today, and I told him that story, and I was like, I gotta tell Bill Moseley that because, man, that's something I just recall upon when I need to. I always will love that. Being 18 years old, we have to MapQuest all the way from the country to the city to watch this movie.
You know, it's interesting how much, what a bond we all have as horror fans. I mean, a lot of people come up to me as I do these conventions, and they had memories like that. They were, 7 years old when they snuck in, and their older brother was watching House of a Thousand Corpses and freaked them out for life, and all that kind of stuff. So I think of that as it's a great story.
Yeah, I'm 36 now. That
36?
I was 17 when that
All right.
happened, so it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to sneak into, the library where our old Zenith black and white was, just to watch, like, in Chicago, I grew up outside of Chicago, we had something called Shock Theater. I'm sure everybody's got their local, whatever it is. And I just remember because it was kind of like, you know, a local station putting on kind of a horror show. And I just remember when I was a little kid, I was watching like the beginning of the end, you know, the giant grasshoppers and, you know, Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price and all these really cool movies. And I remember there was a commercial break, and it came back to the studio, and there was like a little, it's like a Frankenstein laboratory, and there was like a castle, and there was some dry ice and something, and there was a slab with a white sheet over it, and this voice said, "Behold my creation." And this little hand comes in and pulls off the sheet, and there is a stein of beer with a hot dog in it. And he goes, "Frankenstein!" Oh man, even at 8, I thought that was corny, but yeah. All right, take it easy, man. The kid's asleep. Get up, time. All right. This was Grandpa.
This is Scott from Spencer. Hi. You played such crazy, weird characters against crazy, weird actors. I was wondering if you had any particular stories with Dennis Hopper or Paris Hilton from Repo.
Yeah, but Dennis, I already told that my one story about his golf bag. But with Paris, I can say that I'm a big Paris Hilton fan, and that during the course of Repo, I just thought she was great. You know, we never became good friends, but I thought she was awesome. I thought she showed up and did her work. She was prepared. She was good at it. But it was kind of weird because a couple of nights we shot it in Toronto. That's where we actually shot the actual movie, and she would take us. She took us out a couple times, us meeting the cast of Repo, because she was getting paid lots of money to go to discotheques in Toronto, and it would have like this one I remember was a very popular discotheque. And it had a ring around like the center of the dance floor, and within the ring were a bunch of couches and some cold cuts, whatever it was. And we all came in and sat in the ring, and Paris would kind of get up, and they would play her videos and her disco songs or something, and she would kind of get up and go over to the edge of the circle, the velvet ropes, and kind of vogue, and people would do selfies with her, and then she would come back. And I thought it was awesome because she was making a lot of money. It was amazing. But as an actor, I thought she was great too, and I always defend her when people go, "Oh, Paris Hilton was in that." I mean, she rocked. Okay.
All right, we got one more for Bill, and then after he's done, we're going to ask everyone to stay in their seats, please. Let Bill get out there, get settled, and then he'll be doing the signings and the pictures and all that good stuff for you, all right? All right, so Bill, I think it's appropriate we end it with a Texas Chainsaw 2 Massacre question, right? Okay. Back when this was released, after all the hard work you did, everything done, it's all finished, and now the MPAA won't give it a rating and get it out to the theaters. I had to go, I caught it unrated with like 2 people in it because it didn't, no newspapers, there was no coverage. How fucking frustrating is that as all that hard work you put into it?
I didn't really know. Ignorance was bliss for me. Because I saw it. I saw it in Times Square. That was the first screening I saw. And a friend of mine said, when the lights came up after the movie, a friend of mine said, "Hey, here's Chopcott, here's Bill Moseley." I was kind of embarrassed about that. And this guy that was sitting in front of us with a black leather jacket, turns around and goes, "Nice job, man." And he pulls out, he has a hook. He pulls his hook out, and I went, "Oh, thanks, man." And grabbed his hook and shook his hand. But the other time I saw it, the second time was at a drive-in theater. And I guess the problem with the MPAA rating is that if it's more than an R-rated movie, then newspapers won't carry the advertising, and big theater chains won't show the picture. So it was released unrated. I thought that was awesome of Canon Films. And it still actually made more than it cost, so it was a successful film.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Moseley! Thank you, Bill.
Come on out to the lobby.
Well, all right, everybody, thank you so much for coming out.
Absolutely.
OPC HorrorCon, thank you for having us, and please check out BadPersonSociety.com for everything in horror, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And that's it, and it's a wrap. Well, see it.
Well, hold on. Are we going to see you guys all next year at Oklahoma City HorrorCon? I fucking hope so. Have a great night, guys. We'll see you next time.
ECSO!
Pardon me. I just want to say you did a great job with the interview. And I'd
thank you.
never heard of your podcast or anything before this, but I'll definitely check it out now.
Here we go. Hold on, I'll give you some stuff.
Oh.
We got swag. It's not much, but I mean, we got
No, I really
stickers and
appreciate it. Thank you.
here, there's a couple buttons.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
yeah, check it out. We're on YouTube and all the social media and stuff. I love your hat, by the way. I wanted to say that before you walked off earlier.
No, I really appreciate it.
Bill Moseley is signing Nubbin's ass.
Yeah. Trim those fingernails.